Welcome back to more Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland. Last time, we got through Vegetable Valley and most of Ice Cream Island, so this time we're starting out by finishing up this area. Over here is the entrance to Stage 5, and one cool detail about the hub is that the level entrances often reflect the theming of the stages. So for example, the previous stage had a cloudy backdrop and was a sky level. This level's backdrop was a tree and is a foresty level. Here we have another power-up. This is Parasol, which lets us float down gently and can also be used to block certain projectiles. It's not super helpful as an attacking ability, but as a defensive move, it's not bad. We have a few more wheels here, and laser. Let's use laser because we can actually reflect off of these slopes, like so. Over here we have two doors. We actually would need wheel to get to the lower door, but because I'm at full health, I decided to go through the upper path. Basically, I don't need the heal, so I didn't need to make that detour. We have Parasol again. Again, it's not the best for attacking enemies, but it's pretty good against certain enemies that are falling towards you. These spiky enemies here are called Gordos and cannot be inhaled. They're basically invincible, so certain abilities like Wheel will let you go through Gordos, but you can't defeat them. This is High Jump, allowing us to launch ourselves straight into the air to deal damage against enemies. We can also aim it a little bit, but we're mostly launching ourselves fairly upwards, but at a slight angle if we're holding left or right. And with that, we've reached the end of another stage. So next up is the boss of level 2. This is Paint Roller, a very unique boss. They'll basically go around the room drawing on these canvases. Their drawings will come to life, and you can inhale them either to use as projectiles or as copy abilities. So the card just gave us Wheel, this umbrella will give us Parasol, and so on. You can even get several rare abilities like Mike, case in point, and Crash this way. And with that, here's the second piece of the Star Rod. So this is level 3, Butter Building. This is a fairly unique world for a few different reasons. We basically have to climb a giant tower, so let's get started. It also is a unique area for having several visual downgrades from the NES version. Even though this version's art style is generally a lot better, there were several downgrades that had to be made. Which we'll see a little bit later on. We had another fight with Mr. TikTok, but I actually want to hold on to Sword, because in this room we have a large switch. To get to the switch, we need to drop down here, break these blocks, and enter these doors here. So that opens up something on the hub. We'll go over some of those features later, but for now I want to stick to the main stages. So a little higher up is Stage 2. I really like the music in this game. A lot of Kirby music ends up getting reused and remixed a lot, so Butter Building is a very familiar song that's in quite a few different Kirby games, but I really like it. Kirby music in general is pretty nice. They don't have the most unique soundtracks because of reusing a lot of tracks, but it's mostly really pleasant. This game actually does introduce some songs that weren't in Kirby's Adventure, which we'll see a little bit later on. We have a few stone enemies, a spark, and a needle enemy. Let's switch to Needle. Needle's kind of unique because we can actually hold the needle form in this version. I'm pretty sure you weren't able to do that in the NES version. It was basically timed. So let's head over here, see what's in this door. We have a Grand Wheelie. I'm not sure if Wheel's a great copy ability for this fight. So let's do that instead. And let's pick up Wheel. So with Wheel in tow, we should be able to get through this part of the tower a lot more easily. We have quite a few slopes here to go across. We can actually use Wheel to pass through Gordos, like so that's another great use of Wheel. This enemy is actually important because I forgot that Ice was actually a separate copy ability in this game. I thought there was only Freeze. So yeah, you can actually get both Ice and Freeze. Later games would combine the two into one ability, similar to Burning and Fire. This is Bugsy. He basically will charge at us and try to slam us against the ground, so let's be careful to hold on to our power-up. You can use ice to freeze enemies and then kick them into other enemies, which is very good in a boss like this. Ow. But thankfully we're almost done with this fight. There we go. And Bugsy gives us Backdrop, which lets us charge towards enemies and then slam them against the ground. In midair, you can actually throw them, like so. If I'm not mistaken, there's also a backwards slam as well. So Backdrop is also one of the more versatile abilities, even though I do find it a little bit limited, but it is cool. So stage 3 is right over here. And another interesting feature of Backdrop is, I'm pretty sure it was actually changed in Nightmare in Dreamland. If I'm not mistaken, Kirby would basically inhale an enemy and then throw them. So in this version, Kirby charges at enemies, so it works a little bit differently, but the end result is basically the same. This area here is different than in Adventure because you're actually supposed to run around the tower, but in this version you have to wait until the fog clears and then enter the door. So basically the Game Boy Advance could not handle the scrolling of the tower, so to make up for that, you basically wait for the door to open up. So it's kind of a bummer that they weren't able to recreate that section, but overall I do still stand by this being a better version, despite a few missing elements like that. I definitely needed that full heal. I was definitely taking way too much damage. Even though Kirby games are generally pretty easy, I definitely can play really recklessly. Alright, so next up is stage 4. And we have a Warp Star to start out. So we have another fight with the Meta Knights. We have Burning this time, so hopefully this won't go too poorly. I say as I immediately lose my copy ability. That seems to happen a lot. I'll say something like, I hope this goes well, and then I immediately lose my ability. It's definitely so much easier in this game to lose abilities because of only requiring one hit to lose your ability, compared to later games where it's a lot more difficult to actually drop a copy ability. I do prefer that later system, as someone who tends to stick with one copy ability and doesn't switch too often. Alright, so we have an updraft here that kind of carries us upwards. It's kind of dangerous with all the hazards around, but we made it to the top. So stage 5 is even higher up. And we're starting out with a spark enemy, a sword enemy, and an invincibility candy. So that's a little bit ominous, actually, that they're giving us this right away. I can tell why with all of the crash enemies around. It's definitely good to have something like this, just in case. We have a Gordo here. It would have been nice to have the invincibility for that. This is Bonkers, a very powerful mini-boss. So he basically will attack us with his hammer and throw various projectiles at us. In a lot of cases, enemies will basically generate stars if they don't generate, like, other items to pick up to use against the boss, so it is quite viable to play these games without any copy abilities. But we have Hammer now. And we've almost reached the top, with stage 6. So Hammer is very unique, because like Sword and a few other abilities, Hammer can be used underwater. It can also break certain special blocks and hammer in posts to reach secrets. So Hammer is probably one of my favorite abilities in the series, specifically in later games where Hammer is really overpowered. With the added, more powerful attacks in some of the games like Superstar, Hammer is very, very good, and probably one of my preferred abilities. This is another area that I assume would normally scroll on NES, but instead is basically a scripted sequence in Nightmare in Dreamland. So let's keep climbing with Hammer. Up here we have some blocks to break. And if I'm not mistaken, if we hurry over here, we have another switch. Alright, so that's all of the switches in Butter Building. So all we have left to do is get through the remaining couple of stages here. We have a very dark area here. Unfortunately, that means I have to drop Hammer for now to show off this copy ability. This is Light. As the name implies, this basically lights up the entire area, and is very helpful for seeing what we have to do here. Light is a fairly rare copy ability in specific dark areas, which don't appear that often, but they do help. It does help to reveal certain secrets in later stages. Let's dodge all of these Scarfies here. We can actually see this path has a healing item, the other has a Gordo. If we play carefully, we can see what items are actually here, which kind of defeats some of the challenge of having to actually guess here. And all that's left here is the boss of Butter Building. This is Mr. Bright and Mr. Shine, if I'm not mistaken. We basically have to defeat one at a time. There goes the sun, and there goes the moon. If I can land this final hit. So that's the third piece of the Star Rod. So next up is level 4, Grape Garden. I really like this song. It's very peaceful. In general, Kirby has some really peaceful music. We actually saw a variant of a Waddle Dee. It's now green. They still don't give us any powers, sadly. But it is interesting that they do have a few different variations of enemies to help keep things a little bit more interesting. Even with like sword enemies, there are a few different types of sword enemies. Here we have UFO again, so let's try to get this ability. This will make things a lot easier later on. Even if we can only use UFO in one stage, it is great to have UFO when you can. We have plenty of Gordos around, so being able to fly freely is definitely very nice. I say as I immediately lose UFO, because of course. This is also kind of tricky because of trying to actually pick up your ability when also trying to avoid inhaling the blocks. Here we have another switch. Alright, so with that pressed, let's keep moving. That's a very hidden item there. Basically, there's an extra block in one of those areas, so you kind of have to recognize the difference in the pattern. Alright, so let's complete one more stage. And even though we're in another area, we still have the better building music, oddly enough. Looks like there's a door over here. Sadly, Tornado cannot break the bomb blocks, so we actually have to use a different ability, like so. This actually is not working out very well, so far. So let's try to break this. And the enemy blocked it. There we go. That definitely took longer than it should have. I'm not really concerned about taking damage, and I definitely should be more concerned. I tend to kind of crash through obstacles a lot. I play very recklessly with Kirby because, in general, Kirby games are just generally pretty easy, so I don't really think about being super careful like in other platformers, even though some Kirby games can actually be really difficult. Alright, so let's see what's next. We have a hallway of enemies and spikes. The amount of damage I'm going to heal from actually collecting some of these while going through spikes, the trade-off might not be worth it. We have two Poppy Bros seniors here. They have separate health bars, but thankfully aren't too difficult to defeat. And both would actually give us Crash. So we'll continue exploring Grape Garden next time. So thank you for watching, and I hope you'll join me next time for more Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland.